The desert was never truly silent. Even at twilight, when the sun's last embers bled into the horizon, there was always the whisper of sand shifting beneath the wind, the faint groan of dunes rolling like waves in an unseen ocean. Cale Ardent had listened to those sounds for decades, and tonight they guided him as surely as a map. He moved slowly, each step deliberate, his boots sinking into the cooling sand. The strap of his satchel dug into his shoulder, heavy with notebooks, tools, and the single item he never left behind, the crystal shard. Even through the worn leather of its pouch, he could feel its faint hum, like the heartbeat of a small animal. Cale's breath was thin in the dry air. His knees ached, his joints protested, but his eyes burned with the same fever they had carried since his youth, the hunger to find the city of ashen suns. Scholars laughed when he spoke of it, calling it a drunkard's tale born from market gossip and nomad legends. But Cale had seen pieces, fragments of carvings, scraps of symbols, all pointing to a place the world had been made to forget. Tonight, the desert itself had revealed a clue. A rare, violent sandstorm 3 days past had torn away layers of dune, and locals spoke of a black gap yawning in the sandstone cliffs. Cale had walked 2 days to see it for himself. He reached it just as the light failed, a narrow, jagged fissure in the rock, wide enough for a man to squeeze through. Cold air breathed from it, smelling of stone and something older still. He lit his lantern and stepped in. The shaft sloped down, the walls tight around him, until the ceiling lifted suddenly, and he stepped into a corridor carved from the living rock. Sand crunched under his boots. The lantern light caught faint shapes on the walls, geometric patterns and figures with elongated skulls. The hum from the crystal in his pouch grew stronger. At the corridor's end was a vast chamber, its roof vanishing into shadow. The walls were covered in carvings, warriors riding strange beasts, figures raising staffs toward suns split in two, a monstrous spider-like creature looming over a burning city. Cale pulled the crystal from its pouch. It was warm now, its edges sharp and perfect despite the centuries. As he held it up, its light, soft and white, spread across the carvings. Hidden details bloomed into view, figures that had been invisible moments before, entire scenes that shimmered into existence. He stepped closer, tracing the glowing panels with his fingertips. The carvings told a story, but the script was a tangled mixture of tongues he only half knew. He began sketching feverishly in his notebook, his old hand steady with focus. One panel caught his breath, a cloaked figure holding a crystal identical to his own. Around the figure knelt crowds of people, but in later panels, that same figure was hunted, cornered by monstrous forms. Cale stared at it for a long moment, his mind racing with questions. He did not notice the faint, almost imperceptible, movement in the farthest shadows of the chamber. Cale worked for hours, hunched in the lantern glow, tracing lines of text and sketching figures. He had pieced together enough of the language to follow the broad strokes of the tale. This was the record of a people who called themselves the First Keepers, guardians of a light that held back the endless night. The light, the carvings claimed, was divided into 7 vessels. The keys. Cale's pulse quickened when he saw one depicted, the same faceted crystal in his hand. Each key was hidden after a great war against beings called the Devourers. The carvings showed them as massive spider-like creatures with too many legs and eyes that burned like coals. But as the story continued, the tone shifted. The Keepers began using the light not only to defend themselves, but to rule, enslaving their enemies and even their own people. This led to a rebellion, cities burning, and finally the sealing away of the keys. The last rows of carvings were warnings, symbols for curse, awakening, and hunger. The final line Cale translated read, "Those who wake thee." Stone's light will wake its shadows. A shiver ran up his spine. He set the crystal down to take a drink from his flask. The air felt colder now. His breath fogged faintly in the lantern glow. Somewhere deep in the hall, stone scraped against stone. He froze, listening. The sound came again, faint, rhythmic, like claws on rock. Just the wind, he muttered, though the air was still. He picked up the crystal and moved along the wall. More panels lit up under its glow. In one, a figure, perhaps a king, raised the crystal toward the sky, summoning a beam of light that shattered a monstrous silhouette. But in the next panel, the same figure lay dead, the crystal clutched in his skeletal hand. Cale's heart pounded. This was more than archaeology. This was a warning from the dead. And yet, another panel caught his eye. It showed a lone keeper, staring into the crystal, and within it, images of people, faces smiling, laughing, embracing. Cale felt his throat tighten. For a heartbeat, he saw another face in the crystal's glow. Pale skin, dark hair, the gentle curve of a smile. He had not seen in 30 years. Elira, he blinked, and she was gone. But the ache in his chest deepened. If the crystal could truly show the past, he could see her again. The thought rooted itself in his mind. He didn't hear the clicking footsteps grow louder. He didn't see the shadows lengthen behind him. The first sign Cale wasn't alone came when the lantern flame shuddered violently, though no wind stirred. Then came the smell, faint, metallic, like blood left too long in the sun. He turned, crystal in hand. The far edge of the chamber was pitch black, but within it, something moved. Limbs, too many limbs, unfolded from the dark. A spider-like creature, tall as a man's chest, crept into the light. Its body shimmered faintly, as if half made of smoke, but its eyes burned. Cold white. Cale stumbled back, heart hammering. The creature's movement was wrong, too smooth, too silent, except for the click of its clawed feet. When the crystal's glow touched it, the thing recoiled slightly, then hissed, a sound like stone grinding on stone. Cale ran. He sprinted. Down a side passage, the creature's clicks echoing behind him. His lungs burned. He clutched the crystal tight, its light bouncing across walls carved with more symbols. The passage opened into a smaller chamber. 7 pedestals stood in a circle, 6 empty. The 7th held a crystal exactly like his own, or rather, had once held it. The stone indentation was empty now. "This is where you belonged," Cale whispered to the crystal in his palm. A voice filled the room, cold and echoing, speaking in the ancient tongue. Cale understood enough to grasp its meaning. The light is a shield and a beacon. The devourers hunt the bearer. Only united can the 7 end the hunger. The spider thing's clicking grew louder. Cale's eyes darted to the carvings along the chamber walls. One showed a keeper standing on the central dais, crystal raised, light spilling upward in a column. The next panel showed the keeper's body falling limp as the creature dissolved into mist. A sacrifice. The door behind him exploded in a shower of stone dust. The spider thing crawled through, legs folding and unfolding like blades. Cale stepped onto the dais. The crystal pulsed in Cale's hand, almost painfully bright. The carvings had shown what must be done. Pour one's life into the crystal, unleash its full light, and seal the creature away. There would be no surviving it. The spider thing paused at the edge of the dais, swaying slightly as if tasting the air. Cale's thoughts flickered to Elira, her laughter, the warmth of her hand in his, the way she had believed in his work, when no one else had. If he used the crystal, he would see her again, for a moment, before the end. He lifted it high. The chamber shook. Light flared from the crystal, wrapping around him in a cocoon of blinding white. The spider thing screeched, retreating, but the light chased it, burning its translucent body into nothing. Cale's knees buckled. The light was pulling something from him. His strength, his breath, his very heartbeat. And then, in the center of the radiance, she appeared. Elira, as young as the day he had met her. She smiled, stepping close, though he knew she wasn't truly there. Her lips moved, and though no sound reached him, he understood. You did it. The light surged one last time. The creature was gone. The crystal cracked, shattering in his hand. Cale fell to his knees. The last thing he saw was the carvings changing, reshaping to show him, Cale ardent, standing among the ancient heroes. Then darkness. Centuries later, another sandstorm tore the desert open. A young explorer stumbled into a chamber of carvings. One showed a man holding a crystal aloft, the light driving away a monstrous spider. The inscription beneath was old, but the explorer could read it. The Last Keeper. From the shadows beyond the carvings came the faint, deliberate click of claws. On stone.